Funding for the production of Folks is provided in part by the Friends of LPB.
Coming up today on Folks, a look at some sit-ins that took place in downtown Baton Rouge 25 years ago. Genevieve Stewart takes us on a trip back in time as she talks with Dr. Joseph Cohen, chairman of the Jewish Studies program at Tulane University, about Louisiana's Jewish communities. Then we'll visit a farm in Plaisance, Louisiana, where a bunch of folks are having a foot-stomping good time. I'm Rob Hinton, and we'll have those stories today on Folks.
Everybody says folks, just plain old folks. Everybody just people all over the world. Folks who live, folks got to give, folks got to care, folks got to share. Our world is small.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the summer edition of Folks. Over the next 4 or 5 weeks, we will once again share with you some of the stories we have done over the last 2 seasons. So let's get started. Our first story deals with some sit-in demonstrations that took place in Baton Rouge some 25 years ago. Sit-ins involving a group of students from Southern University who refused to be refused. This is how downtown Baton Rouge looks today, an ever-growing skyline. But this is how it looked 25 years ago. Not only was the skyline different, but so were racial attitudes. In 1960, Baton Rouge was still very much segregated, but a group of students at Southern University got together and began questioning segregated city and state laws. On March 28, 1960, 7 students from Southern University quietly sat at the lunch counter reserved for whites at Kress Department Store. After the store manager reportedly completed his meal, policemen were called and the students were subsequently arrested for refusing to leave. This is a picture of student Felton Vaudry being escorted from the store. Another student who took part in what was called a sit-down lunch counter demonstration was Kenneth Johnson, now judge at the Supreme Bench of Baltimore City. He recently spoke to an audience at Southern University commemorating the incident.
At the appointed time at 2 o'clock, we marched in. The students came from different directions and took our seat at the lunch counter. Major Johns, who's now deceased, was the one left behind to call the police. The purpose, of course, for calling the police was to make certain that the police could get to us before a hostile white crowd could get to us. And at the lunch counter, I made a resolution that I would never in my life be as afraid of anything as I was then. I'm certainly glad that no student said, let's change our mind and go, because I would have followed that lead. And while sitting at that counter, I was completely wet with perspiration. That's exactly how afraid I was. But we had to do what we had to do, and here we were. The waitress, of course, refused to serve us, the white waitress, and told us to move around to the other side, etc. It's been 25 years, and I can't remember all the detail, but I do remember the black waitress from the colored side came around, and she scolded us and told us that we had no business there, and we were the type of people who were causing trouble for everybody, and that we were, quote, showing out, end quote. Well, we didn't leave. The police came, and I was pretty happy to see them. They took us to jail. We were bailed out the night before, the same night.
Marvin Robinson was also one of the 7 who took part in the demonstration at Kress's. He was president of the Student Government Association at the time.
As I look at the next day, a tremendous number of people again. If you can imagine, March the 30th, if I'm not mistaken, the paper said there were 3,000 black students that marched. Now you must understand, can you understand the commitment of 3,000 students marching from this point downtown to the state capitol and not one word being said? 3,000 people scared hell out of white folk because there was not one word. Scared daylights out of me because every time we looked up, we were continuously confronted with where are we going next?
In this block, where the American Bank building now stands, was Sitman's drugstore. On March 29, 1960, two male students from Southern went inside the store, which had no eating facilities for blacks, and requested service. Now, the manager of the store didn't call police, but told the students that they were welcome as good customers in other parts of the store. However, an on-duty police officer saw what was going on and reported the incident. Minutes later, a police captain came and told the students that they were in violation of the law. The students refused to leave, and they, too, were arrested. The two students were John Garner and Vernon Jordan. Jordan's wife shared with the audience her husband's feelings about the occasion.
And through the rough times, when there was no definite definition of equality, Vernon learned to work hard to fight for what he wanted in life. His goal was that if you could believe it, if you could dream it first, then believe it, and work hard, you can achieve it. The demonstrations and the aftermath weren't easy for any of these guys. They experienced pain, physical and mental anguish, frustration, disappointment, sorrow. But none of them regretted it. And Vernon, of course, didn't regret it. It only made him look stronger and greater determination to continue the fight.
What is now the Riverside Centroplex in Baton Rouge was the site of the old Greyhound Bus Station. It is here in 1960 that 7 political science students from Southern, all member of a constitutional law class, decided to put theory into practice. They chose the bus station because, as they saw it, the law was clearly on their side. Now, they were asked to seek services at the snack bar marked for colored and were arrested when they refused. One of the students at the bus station was Lawrence Hurst, now Lieutenant Colonel Hurst, retired from the U.S. Army.
People like to ask, did you learn anything from that? And this is what I like to tell the students today. I think I did learn something from that incident. And if you ask me would I do it again, I suppose the answer is yes, I would do it again. I learned that you must think for yourself.
Now, all of the students who took part in the sit-ins were suspended from the university. As a result, emotions flared and many other students withdrew from Southern, but the student body president, who continued to direct the protest from off campus, persuaded the students to remain in school. The court battles involving the sit-ins went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, Garner versus Louisiana. Now, the court ruled that there was no evidence to support convictions for disturbing the peace because of the peaceful and orderly conduct of each student. In addition, the court said that since privately owned lunch counters operated under public licenses, their facilities were public and the discriminatory practices, which were enforced by state law, denied equal protection. Our next story also takes us back in time as we take a look at Louisiana's Jewish communities. Here's Genevieve Stewart.
Rob, Louisiana's Jewish communities are primarily identified by their beautiful and often historic temples of worship, or synagogues, such as Touro Synagogue in New Orleans, one of the country's oldest. It is there I spoke with Dr. Joseph Cohen, chairman of Tulane University's Jewish Studies program. The story of Louisiana's Jewish communities begins in New Orleans and spreads upriver from there. The early Jewish settlers were merchants of Spanish and German descent. They entered the port of New Orleans in the 1800s. During the first 100 years of New Orleans development, Louisiana's black codes not only restricted slave behavior, but prohibited the settlement of Jews, as Dr. Cohen explains.
There was another problem in 1723-24. The Black Code was promulgated, which set conditions for slavery, but also had a provision in it precluding the settlement of Jews in Louisiana. As this was widely known throughout the Atlantic world, Jews were not tempted to come to this region of the country.
The black codes were relaxed and amended for Jews following the Louisiana Purchase. The Jewish migration began and assimilation soon followed. By 1835, there were 125 Jewish families in New Orleans. And for the young Jewish settlers, were there problems of anti-Semitism?
No, New Orleans was remarkable for its degree of tolerance. The city was wide open. It was both a port town and a river town, and it attracted all kinds of people. And the easygoing ambience of the city that we speak of today was already apparent in its earliest years. And because it was flourishing and was developing, all peoples were welcomed here. And the Jews who came found themselves very comfortable and hospitable surroundings, and they just sort of melded into the fabric of New Orleans society.
Between 1835 and the 1880s, Louisiana's Jews prospered and grew with synagogues and Hebrew benevolent associations. Synagogues spread to Lake Charles and the congregation Sinai. Shreveport, where city officials donated land for a Jewish cemetery, and Alexandria, where this temple adjoined a Christian church, and the first Touro Synagogue in New Orleans, founded in 1828. Good relations between Christians and Jews flourished until the Reconstruction period following the Civil War. As the defeated Confederacy rebuilt its social order, Jews were excluded.
A number of Eastern European Jews came to New Orleans. This changed the whole complexion of the New Orleans Jewish community at that time, and it meant that the free and easy associations which had existed between the Jewish community and the non-Jewish community at that time were strained rather considerably. At the same time, a large number of Italians were also coming to New Orleans. The immigrant community here was growing not just from the influx of Jews, but from many different peoples. And their arrival coincided with the regaining of the power of the aristocracy, which largely was symbolized by the crew of Comus. And whereas Jews had the run of the Boston Club and of the other private clubs in the late 19th century, by 1910, because the aristocracy had pretty much closed ranks, Jews were then excluded from participation in the most prestigious of the Carnival organizations, and Momus, Comus, and Proteus, and a number of others, and these organizations to this day are still restricted in that sense. And other Carnival organizations followed suit. And the spirit of tolerance and the spirit of cooperation which had persisted for so long here disappeared.
In spite of anti-Semitic social snubs, Jewish charity, philanthropy, and businesses maintained their contributions to Louisiana's growth. Names such as Leonard Crower and Gus Meyer are now household words. Leon Godshaw founded his department store on Canal Street. Albert Godshaw sweetened the Louisiana economy and our tables with Godshaw's sugar. Judah Touro, who died in 1854, used his immense fortune to set the precedent for Jewish philanthropy. The public is still benefiting today. Judah Touro was the leading light and principal contributor to New Orleans Touro Infirmary. This now modern hospital is celebrating its 130th birthday by treating over 5 million patients. Dr. Cohen explains why these men and other Jews became prominently involved in civic and cultural projects.
There were other ramifications to it as well, because so many of the important members of the establishment devoted so much of their time and their resources, say, to the planning of the carnival balls and the pageants and the parades and so on. A lot of our other institutions in the community were neglected. Jews turned their attention to these cultural institutions which had been neglected and were they had an enormously important role in the development of the New Orleans Symphony and in the museum, the New Orleans Museum of Art, which was known formally as the Isaac Delgado Museum. They found an outlet for their energies and their resources in helping to develop these cultural institutions because the social activity at the highest level tied in with Mardi Gras had been denied to them.
Although many carnival clubs have now included Jews, Dr. Cohen states that the older carnival crews and restricted country club memberships are the last bastions of anti-Semitism in Louisiana.
With the recent development of new carnival organizations and a whole new spirit of carnival, the anti-Semitism, which persisted and indeed is not entirely gone today, has come to be less meaningful. The power of the old guard, you see, has been greatly diminished, so that they do not need to be taken as seriously now as they once were.
What would you account for that?
Well, I think that so long as that old guard was fairly much in control of the city, and that isn't to say that they were involved in the day-to-day government, but they represented the power and the wealth of the community, and so long as what I refer to as the Mardi Gras syndrome was dominant, that is, the city did not move forward. It lived in the past. So it was a lovely romantic illusion. But it meant that Atlanta and Dallas and Houston surged ahead at a time when many people in this community were not addressing its needs and recognizing its goals and trying to help it achieve the potential.
Louisiana's Jews have contributed richly to our cultural and educational institutions, our economy, and our social consciousness. Through groups like the B'nai B'rith, the Jewish Federation, and the Anti-Defamation League, and a new liberal business community, the spirit of tolerance has almost come full circle again in Louisiana.
Power has shifted rather considerably from that old aristocracy to new entrepreneurs who simply are not going to be submissive to an outmoded social convention. I think Carnival is much healthier and the city's much healthier, and of course the progress that's now being made has also contributed to a return, I think, of more of that spirit of tolerance. One would hope that even the old line Carnival crews would recognize that their attitude in that respect is outmoded and that it is, and the role that they might be playing is a lot less significant than if they recognize what New Orleans is all about today.
We close today's show with what a lot of folks describe as a foot-stomping good time. Foot-stomping music indeed, and it all took place on this farm in Plaisance, Louisiana, the setting of the second annual Southwest Louisiana Zydeco Festival. Now, Zydeco is not your traditional Cajun music, nor is it rhythm and blues. Zydeco is, well, let's get Nick Spitzer of the Louisiana Folklife Program to tell us.
Well, Zydeco is a mixture of traditional Cajun music, the French music from Acadia and originally from France, mingled with the West Indian, Afro-Caribbean rhythms that came in with some of the West Indian slaves and Creoles of color. and then Afro-American black blues from the U.S., all put together in a melange. Then you end up with the sound called Zydeco.
But the word Zydeco has a different meaning.
Zydeco means beans. We have our shirts, if you notice, are made from string beans.
So what's the connection between a snap bean and this form of music?
There's an old expression in Creole culture saying les Zydeco sont pas salés. And what that means is that there isn't even enough salt to flavor the beans. It means times are tough. You hadn't even got a little salt meat to throw in your beans. So someone might say to you in the old days, hey, tu vas faire Zydeco, meaning you're going to make your beans this year? And you'd say, ouais, Zydeco, mes Zydeco sont pas salés, meaning I'm going to make the beans, but I hadn't got salt to put in them. So I'm making it, but barely. And so Zydeco is kind of like a French blues, you could say, in that mood, the way it is expressed.
The king of Zydeco is none other than Clifton Chenier of Lafayette. Born in Opelousas, Chenier's musical style is well known throughout the state and abroad. He has won numerous awards, including a Grammy and the 1984 National Heritage Fellowship Award. On this particular day, festival officials presented him with another award. Although he was very appreciative, Chenier said that the recognition was late in coming.
I've been born and raised in Opelousas. And nobody ever did nothing for me in Opelousas. I had to go away from here and make a name for myself. And suppose this, I appreciate that. But I've been having this so long. I got this, when I first got this. You know what it was? In Paris. In Paris, where it should have been right here. See? Now, I got this in Houston. Got this in Lake Charles. I got this everywhere but here. I'm just getting it now. You know why? Because I had to show them what French music can do with a Grammy. See? That's all I want to say. So the next one coming up in your hometown, Tulane.
One of the biggest enthusiasts of Zydeco music is disc jockey Luke Collins of radio station KVPI in Ville Platte, and he talked to us about Chenier's impact on Zydeco music.
You know, if it wouldn't be for Clifton Chenier, I don't think there would be any Zydeco today, because ever since I was about 7, 8 years old, Clifton Chenier been playing Zydeco music. But you know, them white stations, we didn't have them black stations like we got now. They would play maybe 1 or 2 of his songs, but it wasn't what you call popular like they got now. And you can give Clifton Chenier what you call real credit for Zydeco music, because he's the one started Zydeco music.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with another edition of Folks, and we hope to see you then. Bye-bye.
Funding for the production of Folks is provided in part by the Friends of LPB.